You're the actual
Stand by.
P and Z commissioner in the room.
The vice chairs, Sharon.
Zach, you want to hear from there?
Hello, everyone. It is Tuesday, September 10th, and this is the regular meeting of the Pitkin County Planning and Zoning Commission. I would start off. We have Jasmine, Joe, Jeffrey, and myself present. And any commissioner comments?
Nope.
Just one. Boulder County may have a moratorium based on a change in land use around house size. So
May.
they came out with it this morning. That was pretty fantastic. And I guess in other news, we do have a minimum state code that was agreed for wildfire as of Monday afternoon. And so that'll probably make the process either Friday or Monday. Kind of cool.
So is that a draft code at this point to then
It's-
go out to?
It'll be at FACO, which is in Snowmass Village in a couple weeks. It's the Fire Adapted Colorado.
I
Yeah.
can't believe I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's what I was like. And it will be at the APA conference, which is the same day as FACO. So if anyone's going to Loveland, there'll be presenters from the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board at the Loveland APA meeting.
I'll be there.
Yeah, oh, cool. Yeah, I opted to do the one at Snowmass Village for some
Yeah.
reason. And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeffrey. Bonnie, do we have any members of the public who'd like to make a comment?
We have two members of public in the room. Is
Three.
or
Yeah.
three, sorry. Any comments not related to what's on the agenda?
Yours are specific to the lighting code. Great.
All right, great. I guess we will move on to our land use action this evening. The LUC amendment for lighting code with Larissa.
All right, thank you. My name is Larissa Bond. I'm the Development Services Manager in Community Development, and I've been with the county 8 years. I was doing zoning review for the first 5 or 6, so I've reviewed a lot of lighting codes in my time here, and started this process somewhere along the line, and I was still doing zoning review. I have a whole team with me here today. Brittany is with Clanton Associates. They're a Front Range firm that does landscape design and policy writing. Brittany, I don't know, do you want to add to that or?
Oh, we can't hear you.
Am I here now?
Yes.
Okay. Clinton Associates is a lighting and engineering firm where we do transportation projects, we do architectural lighting projects, and we have a master planning and policy team in which we help cities develop lighting master plans as well as lighting ordinances. And we work closely with Dark Sky International to do those.
And they also help the city of Aspen do their lighting code rewrite, and they're working with Town of Snowmass currently. So, and also with us today are 2 local dark sky advocates, Ann Driggers, who you might know from working at the county, but that's not why she's here. She's here for her enthusiasm for night sky photography. And Martha Ferguson is a resident in Old Snowmass, and she's been working to get the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus dark sky certified. Right, so they'll be showing you a lot of beautiful images and talking about kind of the science behind why we need to adopt lighting regulations. And then after that, I'll go into the lighting code specific.
Okay, so I will take it away right now. My name is Martha Ferguson. I live in Old Snowmass. I've lived there a good long time. And through the years, a bunch of us old timers, but even newcomers have noticed that it used to be probably the darkest spot in the valley for a long time, but that has started to change. And with the advent of all these folks moving in ever since COVID, it seemed like a good time to maybe jump in and look at the lighting in Old Snowmass And so that is how I got interested. I am currently on the Snowmass Capital Creek Caucus Board. And I'm also the one who spearheaded this thing called Wild Sky Old Snowmass, which is part of the caucus. So we work with the caucus to do what we're doing, which is to address overlighting in our area. And I reached out to Dark Sky International to see if we could become an international dark sky community in Old Snowmass. So it's a big bite and something to chew on. It's not easy to do. It's a very rigorous program. It takes time, but we have been working diligently now for a couple of years, which actually is considered pretty fast timing. I know that Paonia just got certified within the last week, and it took 6 years for them to do this. But they also have a lot more complicated issues there with a town that's spread out with rogue buildings here and there, old timers who don't really want to change anything, et cetera. Anyway, they did do it. So that's why I'm involved in this. And part of that program with Dark Sky International requires that we do a lot of advocating and education to the community. And in my mind, that is up and down valley. It's not just, of course, where we are in Old Snowmass, which is still a pretty small place. So that is how we got going on this. And as we move, we have some slides, and hopefully everyone, online can see these. We thought we'd just talk a little bit about, first of all, what not only Old Snowmass, but the whole valley is looking like right now. And Anne has done a fabulous, fairly short time-lapse video that we wanted to just present to you to see where we live. Look at this opening shot with a billion stars up there. And we have actually some music from a friend of mine, Johannes Lindstedt, who wrote this song specifically for what we're doing for Dark Sky. It is called The Dark of Night.
Volume's not working.
So that's a fun opening that we like to do, just to show people what we have here in our valley right now. And actually, it's what we have to lose if we don't tighten up on our lighting codes and bring light pollution down a bit. We're still in pretty good shape, but as you will see in some later slides, light pollution is creeping in up and down valley and also from faraway places. So obviously we live in an amazing place. We go out and we can see stars at night. On a clear night, you can see the Milky Way. We've seen it a lot. But I can tell you that more than 80% of the globe cannot see that. they're already drowning in light. In the cities, they basically have light 24/7. And so speaking of which, because of all this, many people in the cities where they don't see the dark sky or a star, or certainly the Milky Way, it has launched a new industry, astrotourism, which is fairly new, but already people are traveling just to see a sky with stars and maybe see the Milky Way if they're lucky. So it's estimated that that industry alone is an ecotourism, which I think is a great thing to invite here since we have tourists anyway. But it's already considered to be $1 billion business into the future. It's a big deal. And it's just a good reason for many, it's like win-win all over the place because while we darken our skies here, we are helping the environment. We are also inviting a healthy kind of tourism here. So I think, it's pretty great. It's good to be in this place. So now, and I don't know if you can go back to that one where I'm taking the dark sky reading. What we do in Old Snowmass, part of this program that we have to do, that's actually me up on the Monastery Road, taking a night sky reading with this little instrument it's called the Unihedron Sky Quality Meter. And it takes a reading of your sky, it lets you know exactly how much light pollution you've got going right above you. In a moment's time, you just press the little button and out comes the reading. In this room, it's 10.48. That's incredibly bright. I know that from all the other readings we've done, like at this place, at the Monastery Road, that came in like at a 21.29. That's pretty darn dark. That's why you can see all the stars. However, if you look right on the horizon there, what is that? That is some light pollution, probably coming from Snowmass Village. Yeah. And actually, and believe it or not, I actually have a little.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
If it works. Oh, yeah, right here on the horizon. That is actually spilling over that actually is making the readings a little brighter than it would be if that wasn't there. But even so, it was really exciting to find that up at the top of Old Snowmass caucus area, it's pretty darn dark, and we knew that. That's why we started there. That reading, when you take several of them and then average them out, you come up with a basic read that it matches to a certain scale on something called the Bortle scale. The Bortle scale is something that measures light pollution in areas, and it's a scale from 1 to 9, with 9 being the absolute worst. It's super light polluted. You don't see a single star. You see sort of a sickly light. That might, if you're thinking about that, it could be Los Angeles. It could be San Jose, very light polluted in those places. But it winds down to a number 1, which is the darkest you can possibly get. And very, very few places in the world actually are dark enough to be a number 1 on the Bortle scale. But I'm happy to say that Death Valley is one of them. It is really dark there with no lights to be seen. So in the end, it turns out that the Monastery Road up in that upper part of Capitol Creek Valley, the Bortle scale reading was a 3, even with that light pollution coming over. That is described as a very rural sky, which is great. And then part of this, we take that at the top of our valley. Then we took a reading about midway. We also go down to the corner at the Park and Ride and 82 and Snowmass Creek Road. So in Little Elk Creek subdivision, that wasn't too bad.
So what's the scale again? 1 to 10?
1 to 9.
1 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With
1 being the darkest?
Yes,
Okay.
9 being the worst.
Okay.
So in Little Elk Creek, that came in at a Bortle scale number 4. It was just behind the monastery. It was pretty dark. There were still a lot of lights on, some glaring lights that did not have shields, the wrong LEDs in them. Even so, it came in at a 4, which is described as a rural kind of fading into a suburban type setting, which makes sense for Little Elk Creek. The last one we did, you can see on this, the third one is the corner, the park and ride. That came in very bright, as you can see. Like you can see the monastery, we've got the Milky Way there in Little Elk Creek, you could still see it down there. There's just a couple of stars. That came in at a class 6, 7. So that gave us basically a measurement to work off of to bring these numbers down, even if it's just a little bit. It's very hard to jump classes. But to see, when you read this, we just took a reading less than a week ago, our second reading, and I have to say that both Little Elk Creek and the corner have come down. So what we're doing actually works. And what we are doing is a lot of information, a lot of advocating. I've gone out and spoken to the owners of the Snowmass Conoco Station Market, those storage units there. And they were very happy to get on board with this. And they went ahead and changed out all their lights. It's beautifully lit now. It was sort of a glaring, blinding situation. Same with the park and ride. I didn't know how that was going to work because it turns out CDOT owns that and controls it. But through various ways and means, managed to come up with the right person in Denver who said, okay, we will work with you on this. And so they have already come and changed out all the light fixtures there. It's definitely a lot better. So that's why when we took our latest reading here, it was really stronger on the class 6. And maybe if we work a little bit more, we can bring that down from there. So, this is just part and parcel to what it takes to become a certified dark sky community. It's very serious business, but people are really on board. People are very interested to find out about it. And so we're very excited about it. Okay, so we could go to that one slide and with that one. This is just a slide that shows what happens when you have unshielded light causing pollution in the sky. And it is an issue. A lot of that is coming from LEDs, of course, because that's what you can buy now. LEDs are the bulb that you buy. But a lot of the problem with light pollution, in fact, the crux of the problem is people who buy LEDs, all with good intention, but they don't know how to buy them. In the beginning, it seemed like there was only one type you could buy, and it was super bright, white, blue light, really strong blinding light. And everybody bought them. They're everywhere. And that alone has created so much problem with our ecosystem on the planet. Because if you think about it, electricity was only invented about 150 years ago, whereas the Earth is estimated to be over 4 billion years old. So we have 4 billion years of light and dark cycles. And suddenly 150 years ago, there's all this light, and the adaptation to that has been very difficult for birds, baby turtles, bugs, butterflies, moths, bats. These are things that we need to keep an ecological balance in our world. And once that gets out of whack, we already see what's happening when climate change is getting us a bit out of whack. So we're just, so light pollution, the good thing about it is it's reversible, and it's pretty quickly reversible. It's not like something that's going to take forever. It's just awareness and knowing what to do at your own level. If it's just turning out a light, that's great. But if you get on board a little bit more and you understand how to buy your LEDs, which you should be buying the LEDs that are 3000 Kelvin or less, and that is a light on the light spectrum. That is sort of an amber gold color, and they have many different choices within that range. But that is the least destructive light versus these bright white lights, which are at the end of the color spectrum, and those are very destructive lights. Especially so if they're not shielded, they're not pointed down. So that's what this push is. I've been lucky enough to, with my timing, to reach out to Larissa when they were just starting the update of this lighting code. which made it very easy to not have to go backwards or ask for something else. So I've been working with Larissa now for a couple of years, pretty much. And it's so exciting to see Pickens County so on board with understanding the light problem and getting behind it and changing the lighting code so that it's smart lighting, it's safe lighting, but we're not creating light pollution. It's pretty simple. Yeah, this just shows some of the animals in the natural world that is having trouble with all this lighting. This next one shows, it's just a brief thing that shows what bad lighting really looks like, of which I've seen quite a bit of that, the first one and the second one there on the left. What we want to get to is the last two on the right, where it's shielded, it's pointed down, and also that one in the end just means it's on a timer or it goes out and it's probably on a motion sensor. So it's not on all the time. Very helpful. So I've already mentioned a bit what we're doing here for Wild Sky and Old Snowmass, and it's an ongoing process, but we're actually finally at the place of being able to apply for this. And it's kind of a long, involved application, but we're very ready. We've done everything that we need to do per the requirements of Dark Sky International. And the final piece to this puzzle is, of course, the update of this lighting code that will segue into what Dark Sky International needs to see to certify us or anybody, any group, any town, any other caucus in Pickens County would need this as well. So it's really a good thing that it's happening now and that Larissa's been so thorough with it. She and her team. I know you've worked a lot. I think we're just gonna show you now. This shows how many places in Colorado are now on board. I can say right now that are already certified, there are 16, I believe, maybe 17. With 10 of those being national parks, national places, national monuments in Colorado. There are 5, and then they just added one more with Paonia, who are communities that have done all this work and become certified. But if you see this, we're on there somewhere, right by Aspen there. These are how many people, this is the interest there is in bringing the lights down in Colorado. It's pretty polluted. We've seen some interesting shots from space looking down on Colorado, looking down on the Roaring Fork Valley. That just shows we're very bright, but this is how many places are already in the pipeline, already working towards the same goal we are. So I find that to be incredibly exciting. It means that a lot of people are thinking the same thing. They want to know, how do we do this? How can we be involved? And I just say bravo to all of it. And we're one of them. We are in there trying to make this happen too. So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anne, who you know already is working for Pickens County. And
Oh, sorry.
but she's also this magnificent photographer who has taken some great shots. And so we're going to see where we live, and we're also going to see this indication of light pollution that's already showing up here.
With the certification, I understand the aesthetic value of it and that. Is there any other, I mean, do you eligible for like government grants or anything else with this certification?
You know, I don't, as far as I know, I haven't heard anything from Dark Sky International that they offer that, but they are changing all the time. They're growing actually. They now are so busy, not just with Colorado, this is all over the country, all over the world. So I don't know if they have a program like that.
Yeah, I like it. I like your title, Protector of the Dark.
I am Protector of the Dark,
It's pretty
and
cool.
Anne and I have been chasing the midnight rainbow for quite a while now, and there it is.
Stargazer and Milky Way chaser.
That's great.
So I originally connected with Martha because she had seen some of my night photography. And so I decided to join the cause, and I have a lot of, I love taking photos, and But what I have found is that very few photos I take don't have some form of light pollution in them. And, this one in particular, and the screen's got really scrambled. It's so much better here, and I feel terrible because it's terrible, resolution on the screen, but, this is actually on the summit of Burnt Mountain, Snowmass, you know, just past up above Elk Camp, and you can see down here, just light pollution there. Isabel's over there. But I'm just gonna quickly, just show you. This is one of my favorite quotes, actually. To know the dark, go dark. To go without sight and find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. I found that quote in a book in the library of of Margie's Hut, and that's I took that photo of the outhouse at Margie's Hut. Probably one of the few places without light pollution, because you're right there in the Hunter Frying Pan wilderness, but probably still it's probably still a class 2 border. There are very few places that are class 1 in Colorado because you have the kind of spillover from Vail there. This is one on the Jerome Park Road out of Carbondale with Mount Sopris. And you can see as you go further to the left, just the amount of light that's just coming up from the Roaring Fork Valley. Most specifically, I think that the movie theater Algebel. It's got terrible lights. Here's the little old schoolhouse up on Missouri Heights, the Cattle Creek one. The pink is light pollution from Glenwood Springs. I was like, oh, that's so pretty. You might know. And actually, this is the International Space Station. I wonder what the people in the schoolhouse must have thought, thinking that there were people flying, would eventually fly above them growing lettuce. And this is a terrible example of light pollution as well. This is my house. And, you know, I mean, we all have houses now with these big windows, and we don't bother putting, you know, drapes on because we want to see all the mountains around us. And I don't think I only had one light on there, and it's amazing with a 20-30 second exposure how much lights really is spilling into the environment. This is a view from my deck, and I took exactly the same photo, same settings, one with a light pollution filter and one without a light pollution filter. And it's a little hard for you to see, but it basically removes a lot of the orange and the red and that you can see in here, which is typical of outdoor lighting. And so you end up with a lot of the blue, but that's kind of LED lighting there as well. But you can see how much pollution there is. Even this is up on Missouri Heights, which is a class 4, 3.
And is that mostly Carbondale on the right? Causing that pollution?
Yes, on the right, that's kind of, you can see the Crystal River Valley, so that's all Carbondale. Yeah. This is a photo I just took up on Aspen Mountain, but it's interesting to me that these orange glows, they're actually clouds, but they're reflecting light from probably Eagle Valley, and maybe Glenwood Springs, the one to the right of the Silver Queen. This is up on Red Table Mountain. You know, there's the radar that monitors all the flights going across the Independence Divide, across the Continental Divide. This was summer in 21, and we had a lot of smoke, and this whole band of yellow is actually smoke being lit up by the lights of the Roaring Fork Valley. And, you know, once you didn't have that smoke capturing the light, then you can see that the night sky is pretty amazing above that. But you think at almost 13,000 feet on top of Red Table Mountain, you're going to be away from it all. No. This was a photo I took on May 11th, at Crown Mountain up above Carbondale, of the Northern Lights. And, I think most people know that that was quite a large geomagnetic storm that we saw here, all over the US. And I had friends in Carbondale and they were texting me and saying, should I go outside now? I'm like, go outside, go outside. And they were like, I can't see anything, I can't see anything. And, you know, that's because they were stuck in here. And you could only see it if you kind of got out of town, but yeah, there's Carbondale and then Glenwood Springs in the distance. This is camped up on the top of Cirque, which has just every single kind of light pollution possible. Glenwood Springs over on the left at the far, and then all of Roaring Fork Valley. And then the orange cloud over on the right, I think is Vale. Or Eagle Butte, no. So that was it, just kind of wanted to give you a few examples of, it's pretty much everywhere. But I think we can really make a difference. And here I think it's Summit County that's the glow on the horizon there.
If I could just add too, that light pollution knows no boundaries. Which is why it's important that we do these presentations, we reach out to our neighboring communities and whatnot to hopefully inspire them to do what we're doing. Because we receive a lot of light pollution, for instance, in Old Snowmass that we haven't created there. It just is spilling over like some of these shots that Ann just showed. It travels a long way and can light up your night, whether you're in that amount of light or not, where it's being produced. So that wraps it up for our presentation anyway.
Guess we'll jump into the lighting code now. So you may be wondering why we need new lighting code. Well, the current code is from 1999. It's a little bit outdated. It has not kept up with technology. It's pretty subjective, a bit ambiguous. It's not uncommon for permit reviews to take multiple rounds with zoning to get through the lighting review. And we can tell it no longer fits our community's needs because of the volume of lighting complaints we get and the trouble we have resolving them.
Yeah.
So like I said, we engaged with Clanton, embarrassing, but it was close to 5 years ago when we first started on this mission. And we did a really thorough existing conditions assessment. That was field work. We were doing night lighting inspections, trying to find trouble areas or trouble fixture types or installation methods. We went through our existing code with a fine-tooth comb to see what's still working for us, what do we need to change. We looked at the lighting codes of the adjacent municipalities and also Dark Skies model lighting ordinance. A lot of what you'll see in our lighting code is directly from there. And then we asked Clint to come up for a visioning session. And this picture on the right is actually our team out in the field with Brittany taking light readings. I think this might have been a Brush Creek Park ride. And then Brittany sat down with us and asked us some of those really hard questions, like what are we really hoping to get out of this? What's our overarching goals? And we'll talk a little bit more about how those results factored into the development of the code. And then most recently, in May, we had a couple public outreach meetings. We did one in Carbondale and one up Valley, and one after work, one during the day. We advertised everywhere we could think of. The turnout wasn't great, but the people that came were engaged. So that was wonderful. We got some good feedback. We also referred it out to, I think, 64 different referrals, all the caucuses, all the adjacent municipalities, other counties, Simi Valley, all the local landscape architects and lighting designers, other county departments. Other people like SKICO and CBW, other referrals like that. So we did a pretty robust public outreach process, and if anybody got a chance to look at the comments we got back, those were robust as well. But really strengthened the code, like very constructive comments. So it was great. The biggest differences between our current code and the draft is more dark sky compliant than the current code. It's more accessible to property owners. We made a conscious effort to really try to keep the text simple, make it comprehensible to non-lighting professionals. We provided relevant and specific guidance for open space and trails, the airport, ski rec zone district, things that were missing in our current code. And it reduces subjectivity of plan review and enforcement. I mean, it really should be pretty simple with this, you know, we opened it up. We're not trying to tell people what to light anymore. We're telling them how to light, and then we're giving them limits. So as long as you're within those limits, your plan can be approved. And you'll know by filling out a compliance form before you even submit your permit. It also simplifies code enforcement as well. So touch briefly on the master plans. Lighting shows up in 7 of our master plans, and all of them are very supportive of protecting the dark sky, enforcing lighting regulations, amending the code to keep up with new technology, that kind of thing. And then the other master plans that don't specifically mention lighting, they still talk to like protecting our rural character and, you know, a lot of the other things that this lighting code will support. That's actually this next slide. The other code sections that the lighting code will support is the protection of our rural character, the right to see the night sky, scenic view protection from the impact of new development. So jumping back to our visioning session results, out of about a dozen questions, I thought these 3 are the ones that really informed the direction of the code. The first one is that we heavily favored the natural environment to the built environment. I think that speaks true to what we see in master plans and what we hear from the public in public outreach events. And then we also favored autonomous solutions. Like, we want people to be able to use their creativity, you know, and come up with innovative solutions. But at the same time, the very next question was, we wanted some level of certainty. And that's because we understand we have a duty to minimize offsite impacts, protect our environment, protect the right to see the night sky, and remove subjectivity from the code. So how do you write a code that allows for people to be creative and innovative, but also within limits? That was the whole thing we wrangled with trying to develop this code, and I think we've accomplished that. Here are some light pollution readings from Carbondale up to Aspen, and you can see there is a big intake uptick in light pollution since 2019-2020. I'm not sure why, if that's just more people living here full-time or whatnot, but this is the time to adopt some stringent lighting regulations that will prevent that from continuing the trend. So here's just an overview of the table of contents. We'll go through each one of these sections. Some of them are pretty straightforward and I'll kind of skip over, but we will give you a brief overview of each. The intent section of the code, this is something our current code is lacking, and we would always say, oh, if we just had an intent section, you know, you can't foresee every possible scenario that's going to come in lighting design when you're reviewing building permits. So we really created a thorough intent section, and we pulled from other sections of the code, like I mentioned earlier, from the Ecological Bill of Rights, from rural character, or whatever that code section is called, energy and resource conservation, and obviously minimization of offsite impacts were all very important to us. And then within that intent, we formed some guiding principles that light should only be on when it is useful, or it should be should have an intended purpose. It should be targeted, it needs to be directed where it's needed. Low light levels, no brighter than necessary for the task, controlled only on when it's useful. And then color temperature, which we'll talk in a little bit, is also very important. So moving into the general requirements section, we're going to touch on pretty much all these code sections, but I did want to mention we don't have a slide on American flags, but that was one that we got some pushback from Wild Sky, Old Snowmass, and Dark Sky, and so we changed it to only allow top-down mounted light. And then local street lighting, I'm not really going to talk about. It's it's not common in Pickens County, but, we did want to prepare in case there is a push for that in the future. We wanted to have some framework in place to respond to it. The applicability section has been really tricky for us. We've shifted it around quite a bit. We've even changed it since what we sent out to the referral agencies, said that all existing fixtures would be considered legal non-conforming for 1 year. And, we got some feedback that people thought that was too stringent, and I think you thought the same as Alja. So we've changed it to 2 years, but that's still on the table. That's part of what we want to discuss with you. The trespass and curfew limitations are easy. They go into effect immediately following adoption. And then we also really need to review building permits holistically with the new lighting code. The way the code's written, it's looking at the entire structure, and if we try to just piece it together with just the additional lights, it won't function the way we need it to. We are proposing a curfew. The city of Aspen just adopted a curfew from 10 PM to 7 AM, so we decided to go with the same time frame they did. A lot of lighting codes are moving towards curfews, because even if you do have really obnoxious lights, it's not as bad if it's off for the majority of the night. There are some exemptions to that. You can have a photo cell with a timer, you can have a motion sensor set to 5 minutes or less, and then a couple exemptions for non-residential lighting. Prohibited lighting. Our code has always prohibited building facade and landscape lighting, and that's something staff really likes about it and thinks it fits with the intent. The wording here is very intentional. When we say intended to, we understand that every sconce is gonna light the building facade, and like you have a path light along a walkway, you're gonna get some of the landscape. It's really just if the intended purpose is to highlight vegetation or highlight the architecture, we don't want to see that. On the other hand, lighting that illuminates the river, that's a deal breaker. Like, it doesn't matter if it's supposed to be lighting a patio or something else. If it illuminates the river, it can't be permitted. Lighting that can be confused with emergency lighting. Lighting construction sites is not allowed. However, there are a few exemptions in there for that. Colored lights and blinking, flashing, and changing intensity lights are also prohibited. So I think this graphic is super helpful. This shows the color temperature range. And as Martha and Ann had touched on earlier, as you start to move to the right end of that range, it's more mimicking daylight. And so those are the lights that have the biggest impact on wildlife and on our own circadian rhythms. The warmer tones are much better for us. So we want to keep it at 3,000 kelvins or less. And that's also what Dark Sky recommends. Our code has always said that lights have to be fully shielded. However, the one difference is previously this light on the bottom left corner would have been approved because we allowed for translucent glass, like frosted glass, to be considered shielded, and we won't anymore. It has to be fully shielded. Light trespass limitations. Still, this is another holdover from our current code. However, we've made it a little more stringent. Currently, I think it says a 1/2 foot candle at the property line. With the new code, we're lowering that to 0.2 foot candles at the property line. But the big change is that we're also including interior lighting, because the interior light trespass is just as obnoxious to your neighbors as the exterior. I even pulled a quote up on someone's lighting plan just recently, just to show that people are already thinking about this. So this is a note from a new single-family residence that says, in addition to following IDA, the International Dark Sky Association basic lighting practices, solar and blackout shading in the residence will prevent off-site glare and light spill from the interior from affecting neighboring properties. People are voluntarily doing this already. And that was something that definitely pulled some comments from the public. Mostly like, well, what about small lot sizes, and you know, what's going to be impossible on little lots, and that's kind of the point. I mean, this is all enforcement based, the light trespass. It's not something we're going to be reviewing on plans. But if your neighbor has an issue, you might need to move your lights, you know, like point them the other direction, close your curtains at night. So again, this is enforcement only. but it does include interior lighting. This is the only subsection of this code that includes interior lighting. Another big one for us, this is maybe our biggest code enforcement lighting scenario, is seasonal lighting. Right now, we call it holiday lighting. The trend is to go away from holiday lighting, only allow it during one season, and keep it when, the days are short and it's more appropriate. The timelines did not change for residential, but we did shorten the non-residential from November 15th to March 30th, only to March 1st. So that was shortened by a month. And there are certain general requirements that it has to meet. It has to meet light trespass, has to be turned off during the day, it has to comply with the curfew and all that kind of thing. So hopefully that will resolve some of those lighting complaints we've been getting. Okay, so moving on to lighting zones. The intent of lighting zones is to make sure that the amount of light is compatible with what's going on there already, right? So if there's a lot of ambient light, more light is appropriate to be able to see. If it's really, really dark, you don't need a lot of light. We kind of saw the county in 3 different zones, rural and remote in the yellow here. I think you guys all know is backcountry, very limited recreation, limited residential uses. Just 1,000 square foot cabin off the grid. Drive there in a snowmobile in the winter kind of thing. And then the opposite of that is the Western Maroon Creek overlay district, which is in the blue here. And that starts at the airport and the ABC and then goes up the Highway 82 corridor to the city of Aspen. There's a lot of ambient light there, and you can actually see in this picture on the lower left corner, that's a picture overlooking the Wamp from McLean Flats. So that has the most, or the least stringent lighting regulations, and the rest of the county would be an LZ1. So for residential, I'm going to talk mostly about these first 2 bullet points, but I just wanted to touch briefly on driveway, sport court, tree mounted lighting, and address monument lighting. These are all either not permitted in the current code or not addressed at all.
So we're here to address that.
Okay, perfect.
The residential.
Yeah.
So we'd love to just chat about that.
So the concept behind that is that if we put limits around what you can do, how many lights you can have, how bright they can be, then does it really matter where on your site they're located? We put some guardrails on there, like the driveway lighting, which has always been prohibited and a lot of people thought was working well. Part of it was ambiguous, right? Because you might have like a couple accessory parking spaces or an auto court, or maybe you go over a bridge and you need a light on your bridge, and like how many different scenarios can you possibly have a driveway lighting? So the idea was you get one bucket, you get this many lumens. If your driveway is super hazardous and that's where you think you need your lumens, use them, but you might not get your, patio lighting or whatever else. The driveway lighting has to be on a motion sensor. The residential sport court lighting has to have a timer set to 1 hour. It has to comply with the curfew. And there's also requirements on the tree mounted and address monument lighting as well, to make sure that we're not creating a nuisance. So the allowed initial lumens per fixture is pretty straightforward. I will say that the lumens on the right-hand side are what Dark Sky International says LZ1 should be. LZ2 is a lot more light, but this is one case where we thought, well, we can do better than that. LZ1 and LZ2 should be the same for residential. We are allowing linear lighting now. There are some really great applications for linear lighting where it can be very subtle and better possibly than a sconce or a path light or something else. So we want to give people the ability to be creative, but it still has to be fully shielded and it can't highlight the building, that kind of thing. The total lumen allowance, I want to spend a little bit of time on because I think these 3 sentences took us longer than the entire rest of the code. And we knew this was really important to hit because if we're opening it up and giving people the ability to light most of what they would like, we have to have a reasonable number of lumens. And in Pickens County, it's not a limit, it's gonna be a target. So we wanted something that would be reasonable, but, not encourage people to put more light on than they would have normally. So the whole intent is to manage light pollution, give them freedom and flexibility, but within limits, and remove subjectivity. Again, there's this whole relationship we have going where people, I think, in my opinion, might just throw a few extra lights on, knowing zoning is gonna come back and be like, hey, can you reduce the number of lights here? And then it starts this whole back and forth, and we want to get away from that. So we looked at what tools do we have at our disposal, and really what other jurisdictions do is they base it on lot size or they base it on hardscape square footage. And neither of those worked for us because our lot sizes are huge. And we didn't want to encourage people to pave more of the site in order to get the lighting that they wanted. So we figured that Pickens County bases everything on floor area. We'll base lighting on floor area too. We analyzed 18 lighting plans for recently issued building permits. So these are plans that were approved under our current code. We were trying to find the norm, we wanted to find the mean amount of light. So we're not trying to make this punitive. We're trying to catch the outliers, basically. And the houses that we reviewed were a couple thousand feet to 15,000 square feet. What we found was anywhere from 2 to 11 lumens per square foot, which is a huge difference. We also found that as the house size got bigger, the amount of lumens per square foot went up. So you would think, everybody has a front entrance and a patio out their kitchen and master bedroom. Like you wouldn't think it would go up exponentially, but it did. So the mean was 3.5 lumens per square foot. And we wanted to also put a cap, so it didn't just keep increasing forever. And we weren't quite sure what that cap would be. So then we engaged in a bunch of night lighting inspections, some of which were on the plans that we had reviewed during this process. We were lucky enough to get a couple big houses up on American Lane to inspect. And that was how we were really going to test this cap that we were exploring. The first one was very dark. It was like 8,000 lumens, which I wouldn't expect most people to only want that amount of light. But the second one we thought was like perfectly lit, not overlit, not underlit. They had a big auto core with a detached CDU. There was the outdoor kitchen, lounge area, pool and spa, like anything you would expect a 15,000 square foot house to have. It was comfortable to sit out there and have a discussion, but you could still see the night sky. And that was 45,200 lumens. But then based on the plans, but then when we got the lighting controls from the contractor, the system, it was dimmed to 26,800. So that's when we knew 35,000 lumens was totally reasonable. The house that size could have 26,800 and be comfortable outside. We were on the right track. I just wanted to briefly show that we come up with these supporting documents, the compliance form and the submittal checklist for applicants for residential projects. That should really streamline the review process. So going into non-residential, bug ratings, which stands for backlight, uplight, and glare, are really about minimizing offsite impacts. So, if your street light is more than 2 mounting heights away from the property line, it can have more backlight than one that's only half a mounting height away from the property line. So these were all taken from Dark Sky International's model lighting ordinance. We did change, we originally had the uplight set to U0, and we got some feedback from the public outreach that that's extremely difficult to accomplish, and that even just like having a lighter finish on the fixture could reflect a little bit of light up. We decided to move it to U1. It's still in compliance with dark sky standards. Just so you know, like this blue area up top of the diagram, that's the uplight. They would only be allowed 10 lumens in the uplight zone if you're a U1. And 60 watt incandescent bulb is about 800 lumens. So it's a very small amount of light. By contrast, glare, you could have 100 lumens of glare in a G1. So the uplight is pretty minimal, but that is something that changed based on public feedback. So here are our methods, you know, with the residential, we're basing it on floor area. With non-residential, it'll be either parking space method or hardscape area method. They can choose whichever one they prefer. We did add to the code based on, I should have been bringing up more comments, I think, as I was going on, but skipped over some, but you know, we got comments that, well, what if we don't have a lot of hardscape on our site? We still have to meet IBC regulations. So we did add a caveat that, you know, even if your lumen limit is lower, you would be able to provide all the lighting required by the IBC. Oh yeah, and also these, oops, sorry. The lumens per square foot and lumens per parking spaces are all from the dark sky model lighting rooms. I went way back, sorry about that, guys. I was trying to do the laser pointer and I was just like holding on the back button. That's it. The only thing that's not dark sky, not the exact same as the model ordinance, is the drive up windows. We did 2,000 no matter what zone you're in. But you were allowed more in LZ2, you were allowed 4,000 or something like that, but other than that, it's exactly. Lighting controls, so they have the same requirements as non-residential, those are general requirements. You have to turn your lights off when there's sufficient daylight, and you have to have them off from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. However, for non-residential, lighting controls will be required to make sure that happens. Here's some examples of handouts we've created to help people with their permit submittals. There's an example plan on the left that shows both the hardscape and parking space methods, submittal requirements, and then a little diagram to show how bug ratings work. And I just kind of lump these all together. They're pretty straightforward. Agricultural buildings get one light per entrance, so there's no like lumen limit for the structure or anything like there is in residential. The historic lighting, for the most part, has to meet all of the code requirements, except for the historic preservation officer can relax. I believe it's shielding, uplighting, and light trespass in order to make sure that the fixtures that are being installed are compatible with the historic structure. We opened a new special district for open space and trails lighting, and I've been working with Carly and Jesse over there on that. We came up with all their property classifications. For the most part, lighting's allowed if it goes back to the rest of the code. So like they have agricultural, administrative and residential facilities on some that would comply with those code sections. The only one that doesn't really fit into any of those other buckets is trailhead and greenway lighting. And for that, we just said it would be based on basically nighttime pedestrian activity. And so the higher the level of pedestrian use, then lighting may be appropriate. They don't have plans really to light anything. In fact, there was a couple properties that have light that I didn't even realize were open space, like the Greenway, which is the AABC bus stop down to the underpass, and then also the Aspen Village bus stop over. They have lighting there, so it's pretty minimal, but we wanted to put guidelines around it. And then the airport currently, lighting for the airport is in the WAMP, which is why I've edited chapter 3. It basically just said they should balance between safety and like dark skies, but we've changed it so that any airside facilities are exempt because the FAA regulates that, but all the land side, the building entrance, the parking lots, pathways, those would all comply with our code. And based on feedback we got from Aspen Skiing Company, they pointed out that they have a lot of nighttime ski area operations that require exterior lighting. So, you know, any other commercial buildings, the warming hut, stuff like that would comply with that non-residential code section. But we did provide for an allowance that, you know, we understand that there's lighting associated with these and they would not be subject to curfew. I think that's it. Do we have any questions? about sports courts or?
Do any of the commissioners have questions they want to ask right now?
I might pipe up and say something here. Larissa and I have been working madly the last few days to just make sure that everything that we're doing for Dark Sky International will work actually with this new code, and it's amazingly done well. There's just not much to talk about. There were a few things that came up at the last minute today where I was having a discussion with my contact at Dark Sky International, who made some comments, which I forwarded to you, Larissa. So I'm not quite sure where we stand on that exactly, if everything is in sync with that we could actually, I mean, I'm assuming there's gonna be a vote tonight, or maybe to delay the vote to make sure everything's clear and cleaned up. So do you have any?
Hear from residents right now?
We'll open it up to the public here in a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think maybe Brittany would be the best one to answer that, because Brittany does have a Dark Sky committee member on staff that's been helping us with the code. And it seems like kind of maybe a disconnect between your Dark Sky person and Clanton's.
Which is what Michael Reimer did say. He
Yeah.
felt like, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe we need to balance this a little better and whatnot, so. But, you know, for my part, what we're trying to accomplish is that when the vote does happen, that it's a done deal and no one needs to come back and tweak it or amend it or anything else, so, you know, and it must happen like this all the time, where at the last minute, new things pop up and everybody's scrambling to just make it right. So that's my only comment for right here at the end, if we're ready to do that or not.
I might be able to weigh in. So when we originally started the ordinance process, it wasn't identified by the county that we would be creating a dark sky, what's the word, dark sky compliant ordinance, that it was an undue burden on the community. And then I would also, however, we are pushing, you know, we pushed the ordinance to go above and beyond what normal, like for example, what Aspen's doing there. So there is a big effort, like you said, on that front. I did get feedback that if Wild Sky or Old Snowmass has its own governance and ordinance, then the Pitkin ordinance wouldn't have jurisdiction to interrupt Old Snowmass from becoming a dark sky community.
Okay, and you got the information from
Rick Utting, who is our dark sky, he creates the dark sky policy. And then also heard back, so that's like an avenue, right, for you to pursue that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then he messaged me like 15 minutes ago. And also said that there are some things, Martha, that you put in your comments, and that's being forwarded into the new dark sky ordinance that's being released by Dark Sky International. So yeah, like, so there's like, it's a full circle here. So all of the comments that are being brought up are being reviewed by Dark Sky and by Rick Utting, who's doing the Dark Sky lighting ordinance for the organization.
Oh, that's great. So I have one question. When you say that, and it may happen that Old Snowmass gets its own set of rules for this, but what happens then when, say, some of the other caucus areas might want to jump on board, which we're hoping they will, and do a dark sky certification also, or other places in the valley here? I mean, within Pitkin County, I guess. How will that work? Will each one of those then have to get a special overlay where they are for lighting, or will the Pitkin County code in the end encompass everyone?
I don't know if I can answer that question because I'm not in the planning seat, so I will send
I
that to
think so.
Larissa.
I can jump in on that. I think at this point, definitely for Old Snowmass, there is already an overlay zone district for your area. I mean, I think that is definitely the tool in the code
Right,
to provide, to add more stringent regulations if you want to
Right.
for your area.
yeah,
Obviously, at some point, if we all of a sudden, you're not the only caucus area that has an overlay zone, we have
Yeah.
many. So you're right. I think there's probably a point where if everybody starts saying, right, this is what we all want to do, then right, our code can always be amended.
yeah,
So right, if there's a point where the county as a whole says this is something we want and we want to make our regulations more stringent, that's certainly someplace we can go.
mhm,
But I think certainly for you guys, you've been on this course and really diligent about it. I think, being able to use your overlay zone to that end.
Yeah.
And to say, I mean, this will still be the standard across the county.
right,
This will be your base, but you'll be able to say, well, actually, instead of, or in addition to, this is more restrictive in
mhm.
our area,
Yeah.
or that, so
Right.
you'll be able to call that out for your.
Yeah, so
your
that's a
area.
good distinction to make. I mean, I figured that the overlay was probably the tool that we would use. But still, I am, because we would love to see more involvement, because of, the fact that light pollution just moves around. I was just curious how that would work for other communities. So I guess they will, as they get into it, they will.
It's always great to have somebody set the example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right, I mean, we've definitely seen that with, right, it's like, oh, wait, that's that. And again, I mean, what you've undertaken as your caucus area to get that designation is one thing. Maybe another area might not want to go fully to that length, but they may like some of the restrictions you're applying and want to put those into,
Right.
to their area as well.
Right.
And then again, right, there's obviously then a conversation of county, at what point are there things that just make sense to do countywide?
Yeah, okay. that's good.
So I think we're making a huge step forward.
Yeah.
With the code, this code as we.
Oh, I do
as
too. Oh,
proposed,
I know
yeah.
so.
And then, right, but it's never, it probably won't stay still for another 25 years or whatever it's been.
Yeah, yeah.
Since the last time,
Probably not.
yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Suzanne. Do we have any questions from any of the commissioners before I move on to public comment? Jeffrey, Joe, Jasmine, no?
I've got a few.
Go ahead.
Appropriate. I hate to start in the parking lot. Let's start with lawyers.
Actually, Jeffrey, do you want to maybe hear
We'll go
comment
public.
before
Sure,
you jump in?
I'm happy.
Because I know your questions are probably pretty detailed.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just gonna guess, just a thought, that maybe it would be. Thank you.
That works. Well, then we will open up public comment right now.
If you'll just state your name for the record,
Sure,
please.
Linda and Dr. Robert Porter. We live on Red Mountain. We've been there for 12 years. And what we would like to see is flexibility, creativity, and we are not animals. We are human beings. We need lighting. There has been a bear and we have a dumpster because we are in remodel mode. So that's why we're here too. We really want to know what our guidelines are. Already, we have run up against some problems, with the lighting code. So, but the bear, we couldn't see him. And he was on top of our dumpster, the green dumpster, trying to get in, of course, he did not. But it was completely black. We were up in a kitchen, both of us with our iPhones. And I'm like, Bob, do you see him? Do you see him? And if anybody would, and we're walking distance to town, we're on Salvation, right above Willoughby. Anybody walking around that corner into our auto court, it is an auto court, would confront a bear without having any idea he was there. But anyway, that's part of it. But we are human beings, we're residents. And I love your program. I love Ann's program. I think what you do is phenomenal, that you're trying to save our dark sky. But we have dark sky all around us. All around us. You can go to hundreds of miles of White River Forest and find dark sky and see the Milky Way. I can still see the Milky Way from our front deck on Red Mountain when we've got lights that are, interior, other people, I mean, we can still see it. But you can go to White River Forest, Independence Pass, you can go you can just go a couple miles out of town. And yes, you'll see a little bit on the horizon, but you can still see beautiful sky. And I am one to love the sky. This is my screensaver. This is that nebulous that was just found. And I mean, this is my deal. So I'm with you. But I'm also paying, I went from $9,000 in taxes to 12 to now 26, 29,000. I want some flexibility. I want to be able to see when I drive up in my auto court. And I think that I have felt so restricted, especially on Red Mountain. And I just feel as a resident, you're hearing all about the people that want, everything to remain dark. Can you imagine if Aspen, do you love those holiday lights in Aspen? In Christmas, in the holiday? Oh, then you must be one of
It's
very
too much.
few. No, it is
Very,
not.
right.
It is not. It's absolutely phenomenal with the snow, with the beauty. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely
I'm not-
beautiful.
I know.
And
it is
you can
beautiful.
go anywhere to find that
Can I
dark
just
sky.
maybe
No,
suggest
excuse me.
something?
I'm just gonna ask that we keep public comment to the folks that are speaking at the time, and y'all have an opportunity for public comment as well, so let's just, please.
And I just wanted to answer something she was.
I understand that, but when you get an opportunity to
Okay.
give public comment, please do it then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and this is our first rodeo with you all. I mean, we've been on Red Mountain since 2012. And, we've seen the construction go up, but, I'm just here to say, we love to be able to light, certain areas and have that, like you said, creativity, to have maybe just three lights we can choose from. It's not fun. It's not lovely. And, we would love a lovely landscape lit up under your rules, but we still ask that you would give a little broader allowance to us. We love our homes. We love Aspen, and that's why we're here. But we feel so imprisoned within the rules and the codes. We really do.
That's
So-
with the existing code.
Yes,
But I think,
I don't know well, you did. say-
yeah, well, I think they've, from what I understand, you've got the parking area, and, 3 or 4 or 5 different, qualifications anyway for lighting now, and you provide, worksheets, that worksheet, so you basically use that and, calculate the number of lumens. And
Right.
our home is like 5,000 square feet. And so we've got maybe 15,000 lumens or 18,000 or something like that.
Correct.
And so with that, there are some rules, obviously, but we can use that. 18,000, how we want, as long as it complies with the rules. So I think there is.
And to Martha's point too, I think under 3,000 Kelvin is important. I don't even like 3,000. I like 2,500. I just think, that anything that's so lit up, so task lit up is horrible and not lovely. So I think putting some limits for sure on the Kelvins you can use. I'd love to see incandescent light come back, but I can't even find any of that. So, it's just, I think within reason, but also how can we all meet in the middle? And not, yes, light it up with fluorescent task lighting. We don't need that. We just need to have, beauty. I call it beautiful lighting. So,
One question, as
Thank you
far
very
as
much for your
enforcement.
comment.
thank you.
Is
One question as far as enforcement, I mean, so say our neighbor has a big bright light. Is that enforced by the county at all, or does it come mainly through the building permits?
No, our enforcement's completely complaint driven. I mean, the county itself will complain if we see it from the right of way, but yeah, neighbors can submit a complaint and then our code enforcement officer will follow up. Martha, Martha knows the drill.
I do. Am I permitted to speak right now?
Yeah, go ahead, Martha.
Are there like fines or do you go to jail?
Well, I can tell you exactly what happens, because we've been dealing with that in Old Snowmass. If you have, and that's the most often asked question to me is, what do? I have a neighbor that's blasting us. But we don't know what to do. And it's a pretty simple solution. You call the code enforcement officer, Pickens County, Chad Abraham now, and I think maybe they're adding some more staff. He's great. And if you have an address, if you can take a few pictures, you can send that to him, and that's his job. He will go up and check it out. He will decide if this is totally out of code. And actually, the ones that I've called on so far are already out of the existing code, never mind this new one. And, you know, and people basically are told, and most people are great about it. Some people give pushback, and if you do give pushback, and there's another complaint that comes, eventually there will be a notice of violation sent. You might get a couple of those with an amount of time to do something about it. And I just only know, I can't tell you the specifics, but it gets a little more serious after that. If you stoutly refuse to change something that's completely out of code and bothering neighbors, and it's, you know, it's been called out. So that's the way you would deal with that in Pickens County.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you for all of what you're doing. I think it's, you know, keeping everybody and everything, you know, but I'd like to see a little bit more of the playing field being leveled.
Yeah, and is it okay if I respond now?
It's up to the
Oh.
chair.
Bonnie, is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment at the moment?
There is no one else, well, you're kind of a double-edged sword.
I know, I am.
Yeah.
I'd love to respond to something, a question you had.
But we do not have any other public online, so we're good there.
Okay, great, thank you. It's, I guess, what I'd like to do right now is move over to commissioner comments and questions. And then if members of the public would like to speak after that, I can reopen the public comment after that. Is what I'd like to do. So
In 10 minutes.
I'm going to pass that, I guess, to, we'll start with Jeffrey.
Larissa, the question for you and for Rye is, how does the county have a look back if either the homeowner doesn't pull a permit or so in other words, the homeowner doesn't do a significant remodel or permit, how does the county have any purview over either interior lighting or exterior lighting? So the way this code is drafted is that you're gonna come back in 2 years to every homeowner in Pickens County and say you've exceeded you got a call and you exceed 0.2 foot candle at the property line. But again, I haven't relamped. I haven't gone in for permit. It seems like an overreach, I guess, from that standpoint. And the code's not really addressing many of the egregious sort of plans we've seen through planning and zoning. So if you think about where we spent a lot of time with a barn with clear stories and skylights, and we were worried about night sky. I don't know if the code's actually addressing interior lighting at
The
all.
only time interior lighting comes up is light trespass, and that's completely for enforcement.
And it's strictly 0.2 at property line. So I guess
But that's an existing restriction, right?
which is 0.5, right? So
But we don't,
Oh, you're making it
don't-
more restrictive?
yeah,
a
but
little bit more restrictive, and also we added interior lighting because it has the same impact as exterior lighting, you know, and a lot of our complaints we can't do much about. They dim their exterior lights or put them down, but all the
Yeah.
interior lights are still offending their neighbors.
Right.
but again, it's Pickens. So we're gonna come in with a 2,500 square foot house, let's just argue. And we meet your exterior lighting budget, but the
Mhm.
house is all glass because it faces Ajax. And so I get it for a new project, you'd be like, oh, you exceed 0.2 at the property line. But for an existing house,
We wouldn't even be checking that at permit. Really, that's just for enforcement.
enforcement.
purposes. Yeah, we don't
So you've
require
got the
photometric
spreadsheet,
lighting,
budget,
foot
yeah.
candles or anything like that.
um,
I can say, is the question more about the light trespass, or it kind of started with the applicability section?
it's really, yeah, it's
What's
sort of looking at
happening
both you
to-
and Rye and saying, how is Pitkin gonna enforce existing homeowners for example, my entire house is incandescent. I think LEDs are horrible.
Mhm.
Light rendering, I can't see the red in your cheeks. Right?
Right.
That's what LED is about, right? It's really poor at rendering color.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I'm being somewhat facetious, but LED is horrible and it's a horrible work surface. It's a horrible lighting
Mhm.
system. But this code reads like an LED code. And again, yeah, so the question's really for Rye, which is legal enforcement in 2 years' time. Did we just create a ticking time bomb over forcing residents to move to an outmoded technology? I don't know. So.
and the what is the outmoded, like, what does that look like?
So, so the question is really that you're basically writing an LED code that's gonna be good for 25 years. Yet we've been specifying metal halide and
I mean, the
tungsten
only place we
and,
require LEDs are on streetlights.
Okay.
Everything else, the code accommodates for, so that's why we explain, like,
Doesn't
to
read
figure
that
out
way.
your initial lumen limit, you take how many lamps you have, multiply by the initial lumen limits to figure that out.
So the only
the-
place where we're sorry, I didn't interrupt.
The only place where it's stated it has to be
LED.
LEDs and street lighting.
Okay.
I mean, I think everything's kind of going that direction, so our current code was pre-LED.
Yeah, yeah.
But we were still measuring in watts, and a 60-watt
But-
LED is.
So just.
So,
if I
so
could
the
jump
question
in too.
for Rye was really, I don't understand how the county could have any enforcement credibility outside of property line foot candle, even the way this is drafted, because it really reads like a homeowner hasn't pulled a permit for 20 years, in 2 years' time is all of a sudden going to be non-conforming from a lighting perspective. That's what I'm asking.
But to be honest.
Sure, it's fine to enact a zoning regulation that results in a non-conforming property use, right? That's happens all the time.
Right.
It's how that non-conforming use is treated after the enactment of the zoning ordinance, or the effective date of the zoning ordinance, that is really the pertinent point of discussion, right? A amortization of a lawful use is not outright prohibited, but there are bookends around that. From a practical standpoint, is potentially what you're talking about as well.
I'm concerned.
How are we gonna pick up a whole host of non-conforming use on year 2, day 1? From a practical standpoint, that's not gonna happen. It's not gonna work.
And I don't think it would be intended
Yeah.
to.
That's the way it reads. It reads, it's pretty draconian. That's why.
Well, there is a point after which, right, we would want people to come into compliance. Are we out there hitting the streets,
Yeah,
going to subdivisions and red tagging everyone? No. I mean, it's sort of, the way I looked at it was after a certain point, we would have the ability at any point in time after that.
right.
If reason came up, whether it's complaint driven or. I go by and go, geez, why is that house so incredibly light? It doesn't seem to me, whatever it might be, that something would trigger. Pursuing that versus right after 2 years, right, we're ready to go out and enforce it upon everyone in the county, which. Clearly is not the intent. But again, to the point of, we need Rye to weigh in on really like the legal piece of that. Like, what is the best way to approach that? In a perfect world, we'd say, boy, wouldn't it be great if everybody over time
Right.
moves more this direction than what they may have had for many years. But,
Yeah, and I haven't had an opportunity to really address the question of non-conforming uses and how to amortize those uses into conforming status. Traditionally, the way Pitkin County has handled that is grabbing and seeking to remedy those non-conforming uses when a property owner came in for a new development application, essentially. And that comports with law to do it that way. Now, the law also doesn't like the existence of non-conforming uses and the perpetuation of those non-conforming uses. So there's a balancing that takes place there, but we're talking about strict legal requirements on one hand,
Mhm.
and how the Board of County Commissioners has chosen to start to bring non-conforming uses into conforming use. And those are two different things to some extent that intersect somewhere.
Yeah, and again, I'm living in a world where either a building permit or a significant remodel would trigger an update
That's
to
typically.
a lighting plan, so this just feels like a big overreach, which is why I'm spending, time on it.
Sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with that as a way of updating community code.
Understood.
So, um,
It is a little more defined than our current code. I think our current code says something along the lines of lighting shall not be installed nor continued. That violates this code. So at least we're given 2 years to,
but we have new language, like we may relax requirements.
was that under the historic?
Yeah. And I guess, so from here, you're gonna go 2 rounds with POCC?
Mhm.
Any chance we can actually get architects or planners or lighting designers to weigh in?
Oh, we had lighting designers. Wait,
On the
I
draft.
sent it to. That was one of your comments. that
Yeah,
I
it was,
addressed.
it seemed very,
I sent it to
out-
every lighting designer in the
Yeah.
valley and every landscape architect in the valley, which
But
is
no
like 30
architects.
people.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to cherry pick, and I also felt like 90% of the exterior lighting plans I see are usually prepared by a landscape architect or a lighting designer. So I felt like I was getting the professional community's feedback by getting comments from those people, but yeah,
it's a structure
I
oriented.
thought about architects and I was like, well, I could either like pick a few or spend like the next day trying to gather all the contact information for every architect in the valley, but
I think it's a weakness of the current code
yeah.
or the proposed, and there is an AIA chapter here, there's a USGBC chapter here. That would both be two contacts rather than trying to come up with a list, so,
Mhm.
sorry, that would be my suggestion.
Oh, I
Um,
see, go through the AIA members.
Yeah, let
Okay.
them, let Andy Corber do it, or let, who's the woman in Basalt, and Amanda Poindexter. And let them go out to their members for it, so they would do the job for you.
I thought I was referring to like the organization.
No, Andy Corber runs AIA West. And she'd be able to give you
And I
a
didn't
report.
think about planners either, because I feel like they're
Yeah.
more big picture. They're not sticking around for the lighting design, in my experience, but. We did get a lot of really good comments from the lighting designers and landscape architects that responded, and that definitely changed. Some, a lot of the code for the better.
It's okay with the chair, can I go one more round on commercial?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
On specific?
I don't know if am I allowed to address anything, or how do you?
Please, yeah,
Okay.
chime in.
Okay,
Mhm.
so correct that this is not an LED code. There's only one spot in the ordinance for street lighting where LED lighting is required, but we carefully wrote it with the intention of lumens as being the bar at which we measure light, and gave criteria that way. And that was a very specific decision to allow for other lighting technology to be used that works within those bounds. But I would like to mention that your neighbors that we're working on the ordinance for in Snowmass are going to require LEDs, and so is Aspen, if that helps. So that's all I was going to say.
For everything?
Great, thank you. That's helpful. Jeffrey, go ahead. And,
So really just parking lots and commercial. Do we have all of our use cases dotted for that? So the picture of you guys out in the parking lot, it's probably one of the most offensive places we have in Pitkin County. It meets Brush Creek requirements, I guess, for dark sky, but I think it's unsafe. And so where's the border between, we have a 12-foot high lamp and it's no longer safe to walk on black ice in a parking lot in the middle of, it just seems like what's the balance? And is it NEC or IBC or IRC or whatever it is? that we
IES.
still meet? IES, are we still meeting code to get
It's
you
not
safely
code.
to your car?
Parking lots are not monitored by IBC or, so it's not in there, but it is the IES recommended light levels. They have that all ironed out. And within this ordinance, the parking lot method and the hardscape method are born from a collaboration between the IES, which is the Illuminating Engineering Society, and the Dark Sky International Community. And so they created these requirements, which are in this ordinance for the parking space method, so that it can be achieved to have that, to meet the parking lot recommendations by the IES. So that is baked in there, if that helps.
So the answer is we're meeting health safety requirements even with the reduced. And again, I just grew up in a world where we wouldn't specify under 3000 Kelvin exterior ever. So it's a changed world.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right. The phosphors on the LEDs have been so much more advanced that you can do that now. You couldn't 6 years ago, but you can now in a good way.
And we'll be changing the mounting height. As Brittany told me to use the language from the residential,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
took it word for word, but it should be 16 feet. We were correct about that.
That's right. Yeah, there's a couple inconsistencies. in that
Yes.
area.
I hope that helps for that.
It does,
kind
I
of
mean,
backing into the calculation is how they established that criteria for the parking space and the hardscape method that's in the non-residential tables.
yeah, I mean, you can hear it. It's like, I want what Dark Sky wants, but what's the minimum in order to get you safely to your car or not get mugged at Brush Creek parking lot? So, and it's a change. Do you have your resolution or appendix A,
Oh, I know the appendix, but- Okay.
Exhibit A, the,
exhibit A?
Here. Mm,
No, I have, that's, so page 13. Number 12. Letter D. Oh, you did. Street lighting actually can go to 20 feet, but we're doing parking lots at 12. Is that what's going on?
Well, that's the one we want to raise. Oh, we did say 20.
That's why I was like, I'm confused reading through this.
Did we, Brittany, when you said we were gonna change the non-residential mounting height, was it 16 or we have 20 for street lighting?
Okay.
need to excuse themselves. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think
Sorry,
16
I'm
feet.
dotting i's if that's okay. So on page 13, we're at 20 feet. For streetlights.
Yep.
I'm
Yes.
confused.
Okay, so 20 feet is definitely when we're doing street transportation illumination, we're using luminance, which is the measurement of a reflection of light off of a surface, versus illuminance, which is the measurement of light on the surface. So looking at reflection instead of what is quantified at the surface. So changing the mounting height to 20 feet for a roadway is important because it establishes that reflectance that's needed by the driver to see. So you won't see many streetlights lower than 20 feet just because of the nature of the calculation. And like Clinton, we do millions of dollars of revenue in transportation projects per year and helped write the code and write the IS guidelines there. So we're very supportive of that 20 feet for transportation for roadway. That's a really solid, we shouldn't go much lower. Now, when it comes to parking lots, that's we could go to 16. We definitely shouldn't do 12, which Larissa and I talked about earlier today. 16 is low, but it's not impossible. There's some benefits you're going to get from 16 feet for light trespass. And then there's going to be benefits you get from 20 feet for general illumination. So sitting where I'm sitting as a professional lighting designer, ILD credentialed, I could say you could go either or. I think this is a decision to be made by the county. We discussed earlier today that 16 feet felt reasonable, but should it seem to cause some confusion, we could bump it up to 20. We have enough guardrails within lumen limits, backlight, uplight, glare that I would feel comfortable in increasing that to 20.
I'm assuming you're just gonna have more poles if you go to 16
Good.
to get your coverage. Can we skip to page 15,
Page first, what section?
table 1?
Table 1. Okay.
Why do we have unshielded fixtures allowed?
So that was actually something I was hoping to discuss with the members of the public that came in, but Dark Sky International does allow unshielded fixtures if they're less than 1,000 lumens. You know, we started with one.
Yeah.
Per property, and then we're like, well, sometimes you want 2 decorative fixtures, you know, 2 sconces on either side of the main entry. And then we said, well, what about, you know, multi-unit houses? Like, that's not equitable to not give them each 2. So it's kind of evolved to 2 unshielded fixtures per dwelling. We think with 800 lumens, I mean, again, that's a 60-watt incandescent bulb equivalent. It's not going to be an issue. It's not allowed in rural and remote, which is intrinsically dark, and we want to keep it that way. But for residents in LZ1 and LZ2, we thought that that was kind of meeting them in the middle. You know, I mean, we want to stay dark sky, but at the same time, we want to give people flexibility. We want them to be able to decide what's important to them to light and have some creative fixtures.
Unshielded and non-shielded are the same thing?
Mhm.
Same?
Did I say non-shielded in here? I should
The
update that.
table says non-shielded and then the images say, sorry, the images say non-shielded and the table says unshielded. So,
We should change that. It's unshielded.
and then do we actually have residences with pole mounted fixtures that are 12 feet high? People have driveway lights 12 feet up in this.
No, currently, yeah,
Don't look at me.
I mean-
No, like current, so I was looking at your current code.
yeah.
I'm like, oh, in the
So-
current code, I mean, again.
Or are you
Larissa's
asking
much
about
more-
street lighting?
Much more knowledgeable.
Why are
from
pole mounted
the-
fixtures even allowed?
Again, we
Page
were
15.
trying to allow flexibility within limits. So our current code doesn't have a lighting cap. It doesn't have a
Right.
lumen allowance for residential. And I kid you not, it's not unusual to see a, you know, lighting designer from LA put 300 lights on a
Right.
private house.
It's called Lakeville
Um,
Ranch, yeah.
So our argument has always been, oh, it needs to be in the immediate vicinity of the house. Oh, it says no driveway lighting, but then there's instances where maybe, you know, it would be nice to have a couple lights at your auxiliary parking area or, you know, in your loop drive or at the bridge. And basically we wanted to remove that subjectivity. Like, how do you define immediate vicinity of the house? Or, you know, do you define driveway, auto court parking and all these different things to say when it is and isn't allowed? So we've kind of just changed it to like, it's allowed. It has to fit in with your lumen allowance. You might not want to put driveway lighting out there if you want lights on your master bedroom patio. It conforms with the same lumen limits per fixture. Driveway lighting has to be on motion sensors. Other lighting has different restrictions.
Doesn't say that though.
Driveway lighting?
The tree lighting says it could be on 24 hours a day.
No, everything's subject to curfew unless in the curfew section it's exempted.
Okay, the question then is why is driveway lighting controlled, but tree lighting is not controlled?
Well, so
Page 15.
if
number
you
3.
want lights on after curfew, they have to be exempt from curfew, they have to be on a motion sensor set to 5 minutes. And we're also trying to prevent that runway effect. Like if the lights only turn on when you're driving down the driveway and then they go off.
Okay.
That's ideal. But the sport court lighting and the tree mounted lighting, which is not on a motion sensor set to 5 minutes, would be subject to the curfew. So that would have to go off at 10 o'clock. In addition, the sport courts have a 1 hour timer on it. So again, we were trying to open it up, let people put the light where they want it. Like, who are we to say, you know, use your gazebo down at the pond in the middle of the night? Maybe they play chess down there every night. If they want to use their lighting budget to light the gazebo, fine. I'm not going to argue with you about that, but it has to comply with your overall lumen allowance for the house. And the lumen allowance is really designed just for traditional lighting around the house. It's based on the houses we've been improving that don't have driveway lighting and all this other auxiliary lighting away from the structure. So they're gonna be giving up lighting in one area in order to get it in another. Should they decide to try to light their sports court or something like that.
Good. Page 18, it goes into pole mounted again, I don't know why.
What's this section? Sorry, I remember.
No, you're good. After the colorful pie chart,
Mhm.
we go into pole mounted again. It just seems like random. Number 4.
This
For
is,
agricultural buildings.
yeah, so that's part of the non-residential section. So that's the only place where we define pole height in non-residential. So we talk about bug ratings and lumen limits, but this is where we tell them you can't have more than 12 feet. So that's where you were finding that 12-foot height for non-residential parking lots.
Good.
Jeffrey, you good?
Good. They're starting eyes.
All right, great. Joe, do you have any questions or comments about lighting?
In the limited time that's left.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to make a speech for about 45 minutes.
Go ahead, please.
I think this is great. I'm tired of seeing all the lights on throughout the county. I mean, there's houses up on Red Mountain that still have their Christmas tree lights on from last year. I think that, Old Snowmass has done a great job in, trying to preserve our rural character. After all, that's what we're all about. And, we survived, let's see, how long? 10,000 years, 15,000 years without having, crazy lighting and stuff like that. If you're worried about slipping on some ice in a parking lot, well then, maybe you need to have a little handheld flashlight. But yeah, I've realized that there's going to be a lot of pushback on this, but I would really like to see something along this line get adopted. I know that we're just a recommending agency or whatever. We're not even an agency, we're just a group of volunteers. But I live in Woody Creek. I used to be able to see the Milky Way. But you take like Aspen Valley Ranch, all their trees are lit up. Over Christmas, it was like there's a wall of light coming off of that property. Everybody likes light. I like light. But I think that we should try and do our best to limit it. I do also agree with a lot of the presentation that it has impacts on wildlife. So I have only a few more minutes. I was just going to call here and join to make a quorum, but I decided to hang on. But for example, where I'm going next for a couple months is to my house on Kauai, and out there we have the same problem. So there's a bird called a shearling. Shearling can only take off from water. People light up their houses. The shearlings think it attracts them. They generally hunt at night under the moonlight, and they get confused because of the light on the land. They fly in and they land and they can't take off. Shearling can only take off from water. So, that's just one example of how, all this excess lighting proliferation throughout the county is affecting at least that area. So, I'm in favor of trying to do something that will, going forward, help preserve, what limited dark skies we have left. There's probably a lot of development that's going to happen over the next, whatever, beyond the period of time I'm going to be in this world. But I would, you know, I'm really in support of trying to do something like this, and appreciate the presentation and all the work and study that's gone into it. I haven't sat and tried to pick through the ordinance or whatever resolution yet to review it, but I just wanted to signal my support for trying to you know, whatever, tone down the lighting throughout the county.
Great, thank you, Joe. Jasmine, comments?
I was going to say a lot of the things that Joe has already said. From the point of view of the city ordinances, a lot of the complaints about what goes on with light pollution in the city comes from Red Mountain. The lights from Red Mountain glare into the city, and as has been pointed out, light pollution is not confined to the area that just explodes. It just goes everywhere, kind of like odor. It doesn't respect property lines or county lines or anything else. I'm very much in favor of this ordinance.
Great, thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Joe and Jasmine said, that I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who put in so much hard work on this project. I think this is great. I see this stuff in my work every day doing property management, where the lighting in these new houses, especially the outdoor lighting, is insane, and every little house is like its own mini X Games now, and it's unacceptable. The one question I did have is our cap on the CCT scale, the Kelvin scale, is no greater than 3,000, correct? Does that apply to Christmas lights too? No, that's too bad, because those blue ones are in terrible taste and very annoying. So if we could get it to cross over, that would be great. And if we could get it to cross over to headlights on cars, that would be great. So if anyone would like to make a motion, I would be interested in hearing that. Or if we have any more comments, let me know.
I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion on the table from Jasmine and a second from Joe. Are there any further commissioner comments before we move forward with the vote?
Hey, Zach, I just have a clarifying question.
Yeah, shoot.
Where we talked about applicability, where we spoke to let light trespass and curfew regulations go into effect immediately.
Yep.
Do we need to say that about seasonal lighting?
I mean,
Because we not only have dates now, which differ from the current code, but it's also compliance with some of these other provisions. I mean, it seems like seasonal lighting, it should be able to, but do we need to specify that?
well, no, I mean, frankly, I'm probably gonna chop up the applicability.
I figure.
So
So,
I don't know.
Just
I think-
soft,
Answer to that is.
okay.
soft, warm only. That's it. All right, well then,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Commissioner comment before you.
Yep.
vote. I hope the applicability section does get cut up significantly, including 2, 3, and 2, 4. Because otherwise everyone in this room is an existing non-conforming structure. And again, I don't understand Pitkin's ability or purview to every structure in the house that has non-conforming exterior lamps.
Mhm.
So the idea that we're gonna relamp everything in 2 years is part of what I'm objecting to in the way this is currently drafted, and I hope it does get cut up before adoption.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. All right, I have a motion on the table by Jasmine and a second by Joe. I'm gonna call a vote. Jeffrey,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jasmine,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So this passes unanimously. And thanks everyone for your time and all the hard work you put into this. And is that the only agenda item we have?
That's it. We'll see you next on September 17th. Oh yeah, next week.
Okay, great. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Perfect.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
conversation.
All right, thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
What are you doing?
Are you okay with all those comments?
Yeah. I have to say, I struggled with the applicability section. It's
Yeah.
gone every